Hi all, this is Core Physical Purpose Sprint Review for sprint number 1. The overview of this sprint. We actually got most of the things done that we wanted to get done. We got 97 completed story points. We have 26 in progress and 31 to do. Not a whole lot was added mid-sprint, but most of the things that were added mid-sprint were completed. So that's a good thing to see. There weren't any retrospective comments listed. I'm not sure whether this is still useful, but I'm going to keep it around for the time being. So I'm going to switch to Jira and go over what got done.
Can I add a retrospective comment?
Yes. Yes, Andy,
please. Post-retrospective. So I think, at least in terms of the platform team, the significant thing that happened this sprint was at last week's TST, we kind of came to an agreement that we should go all in on developing Helm charts for the 6.0 alpha release, and Helm charts for XOS plus Onos plus Volta. And so I think that after that, there was kind of a change in prioritization, and that maybe some things were left on the table while people dived into the Helm charts. At least that's the case for me, and I think probably some other folks too. So that would be my retrospective. There was kind of this somewhat of a priority shift in the middle of the sprint.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Are there any other retrospective comments that people have? Okay, so moving on to Jira. Going through the epics, container-based orchestration. I think this first one is yours, Andy, but I think you probably summarized it.
Right. So I was working on this, looking into how easy it was to deploy OpenStack Helm and how the functionality that it provided. I have a document in the quizzical purpose Core Design Notes folder. It's also linked to the Core 1731 ticket where I was recording my findings. I think the high-level finding is that OpenStack Helm looks pretty good. There would be some work to do to integrate it with what we've already built for Core, but it doesn't look like, I couldn't see any big blockers. And so I think what's next is as Gopi brought up yesterday, to try to engage the 99 cloud guys who are also doing some work in this space and try to see if we can work together on making OpenStack Helm happen. So I didn't count this as done, because I guess the ultimate goal was to put some tasks in Jira about specific things that would need to happen. I didn't quite get there, but I think it's not too far away from that.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Deployments and build automation. We don't have anything there. Documentation, that needs to go away, because that's for last sprint, or last release. Scott, dynamic loading and provisioning of services.
Sure. So the first two of these, I think, are in support of Kubernetes. Chameleon should restart automatically when models change, and Tosca should restart when models change. That got us out of having to have the core container use Docker APIs to restart those two containers. I think that was pretty close to done at the start of the sprint. Most of that was done last sprint. Providing a default owner mechanism for service instances. This was part of cleaning up all of the attics. Many of the attics, all they did was the default owner thing. This had also turned out this had been a long-standing bug that's bitten a few people in the past, where the wrong owner would get set for a particular service. So eliminating attic that was just getting rid of attics. Sometimes we converted them to the new decal format, models.py. Other times just got rid of them because there was nothing left. Migrate core models out of Core Builder. So this was previously the core models were onboarded by Core Builder in a step that transformed the XOS container to the XOS UI container. Instead, we have built those directly into the Docker file for the XOS container. So it just runs the XOS GenX commands that are necessary for that. Eliminate unnecessary core policy code. This was getting rid of the least loaded node scheduler stuff that was old and not used. Implement versioning in the XOS components. That is ongoing. That's going to be supporting repository and container image versioning as well as library versioning to facilitate, I think, primarily the Kubernetes install, but also to let us have finer granularity over releases for individual components. Migrate mCord services from static to dynamic load. So this was actually slated for next sprint, but I was able to work it in between tasks during this sprint. So all of the mCord services that are in the Cavium and NG40 profiles have been migrated. Now that we have all profiles migrated, that allowed us to remove Core Builder. So Core Builder has been removed from the build system. I think that's all of them.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Moving on, there was one eCord task, which is also yours, Scott.
Yeah, so that was the test subscriber. So there was some Tosca that created a test subscriber. It did not have an owner for the test subscriber. So this is one of those things that broke as soon as we fixed that bug that had been related to the things getting the wrong owner. We found that several things had no owner, and that was a problem. So this was a relatively simple Tosca fix.
Okay, thanks. Expanding QA coverage. So I think this is Suchitra and Kailash.
Yes, I'm going to go over them. So the first one, which is validating end-to-end service chain for the new changes. I had worked on this in the first week during the changes when Meteo and Jono were making the changes, but after that we were encountering a lot of issues. So then we decided in one of the stand-ups that we will work on this after all the changes from the development are completed. So, and hence I stopped working on this task, and we will take over again in the next sprint and work for its completion. And the next task is restoring code GUI pipeline. There was a job which had been failing, checking the UI jobs and the Jenkins, and that has been fixed. And the next one, 2771, updating the sanity physical pod script that verifies pod for new changes. These are regarding the container changes that we have, and also a few other checks based on the profile that we install for our pod. So even this has not been completed because we are still waiting for all the changes that has to go in, and very few things have been done as part of this task. So we will take over on this again in sprint 2. And updating container checks with respect to Kubernetes. This is a very lightweight check using the validating the KI pods in the experimental control cube scenario. So that a new test has been written for that. And more checks will be actually performed as part of the sanity physical pod script that we have, and that will continue for the next sprint. And the last one is regarding new jobs for Flex Labs. We had created a new job for parts that we have for Flex, and that has been completed, and so that we can use for mCode or rCode tests. So I think that is all from QA side.
Okay, thanks, Suchitra.
Thank you.
Fabric features and improvements. Is Andrea on, or can someone speak to these who has knowledge of?
You're here, moet BNPR. for the first time in Menlo together. So I guess I'll speak for mine and then he can speak for his. Well, regarding T3, that's my tasks. I did implement dual homing for the hosts, some proper filtering in groups and outputs. It now carries also a distinction between the immediate and deferred actions in order to properly support different type of tracing when there's a clear deferred in the last rule. I implemented a ping all scenario where you just can ping all the hosts based on IPv4 or IPv6, and that will report which one are not properly connected. I did implement the multicast support, so Pierre can also test his own multicast stuff with this multicast. I did investigate the support for the MPLS swap action that is currently in the in T3 in 112 and master. That behavior prevents, for now, the possibility to add multi-labels, because the way I carry the information is a traffic selector, and the traffic selector has one object per key in the backing map. So having multiple MPLS labels would require some implementation, but as of right now, a single MPLS label and swapping the MPLS label, not just pushing and popping, works. I did not do IPv6 unit tests and unit tests for DHCP because some other tasks popped up and some other bug fixes popped up that are not tracked in the Jira stories because I didn't want to bring them in the sprint. Because we released last Friday 112.1 with all these improvements. So some of the last tests revealed some minor improvements that needed to be done to T3 that got priority over the unit tests. That was about it on my side.
Okay. As regards me, the work on multicast in 2798, we fixed some minor defects that we have in the old code in the multicast in Travis. Why 2748 is a pretty big bug that we had. So basically, when we update the source of the multicast, the flows were not properly updated as well. Then we have two bug fixes in ONOS, a null pointer exception, the flow stats collector, and an event reordering issue in the flow objective manager. Finally, in 2739, we did an optimization for multicast. Basically, we introduced some caching. Then we swapped for listening topology events instead of row events in multicast. This to avoid some concurrency issue in the path computation. And then basically we did a minor refactoring of the multicast standard because we were near to the limits for a class. So we need to break down in several subcomponents. The only task that I didn't finish is 2811. Actually, this has been done, is ready to go on Gerrit. I need just that someone merge it. That's all.
Thanks, Andre and Pierre. Moving on, MCord. It looks like we didn't have anything set for MCord for this sprint. Maintenance. I had a few of these. So we had an issue with the CubeSpray install where an upgrade of it changed some of the formats of variables and changed some versions of Kubernetes that were installed. So I had a patch that pinned a specific CubeSpray revision in Git. So we always check out that one. I also updated the inventory because the inventory was the item that changed. And I think also the version of Kubernetes went from 192 to 193. So those are all set and shouldn't change because they're we're checking out a specific CubeSpray Git Git commit. Then 2825, there's an issue where we updated the copyright job was updated and it was evaluating more file types for having the copyright string. I fixed that, and then there's also now in the build scripts folder, there's a script that will run the same tasks as the copyright job, so you can check for whether that job will fail on your code if you want to use that. Matteo, are you there?
Yep. So 28.12, there were still some reference from the WebSocket container to the core container, even if they were not communicating, so we just removed them. We noticed that the REST API documentation in Swagger was not generated for the profile Xproto, so basically for the mcord, rcord, and ecord subscriber, and that has been fixed now. The documentation is on the guide. And the last one, XOS Tosca, in case of error, was reporting those over REST, but not in the Docker logs, so sometimes was hard to catch them during the build. That's it.
Thanks, Matteo. Scott?
So upgrading GRPC to 1.9.1, this is due to the task that I previously mentioned about automatically restarting the Chameleon and Tosca containers in support of the Kubernetes move. It turned out there was some nasty bug in GRPC that we had to work around. And I pulled this in to see if we can upgrade GRPC to see if that bug has already been fixed. It's brought up a few issues with the upgrade process to a newer GRPC. Some of the APIs and stuff that we were counting on in GRPC have changed. So I'm working on updating to support that. Also means pulling in the latest protobuf libraries. So that one's in progress. It's probably a day or so away from completion.
Thanks, Scott. Out of curiosity, is that going to affect, and are we going to need to change the Xproto tools that Sapan was working on to support that?
I don't think so. So what I mentioned about APIs changing, these are internal things that we were querying out of gRPC to, for example, get a list of all models that have been defined in gRPC. It's not something that's externally exposed. So I've had to do a little bit of work in the core, a little bit of work in Chameleon, just small, minor things, but a relatively large amount of them because the version of gRPC we're running right now is pretty old.
Okay, thanks, Scott. We didn't have anything for offline and limited access install rcord. Jono, are you there? Is Jono in Menlo?
No, not in the office.
Okay. Matteo, can you talk about your item, and could you possibly talk about Jono's items?
So I'm not sure about Jono's item. I think remodel OLT service in XOS is part of a discussion we had on what is the best way to model Volta in XOS, and we are working to that. Not sure what 2778 is. While my task, basically we had the rcord service chain that was spun up creating a VOLT service instance that is sitting in the middle of the chain. So we thought it didn't make too much sense, and we moved that behavior to support the creation of a subscriber that will kick off the whole chain.
Okay, thanks, Matteo.
Sure.
I'll go through Refactor build deploy. Let's see. I think a couple of these were Lucas. I'll cover those. One was modifying image builder to support use of tags in the scenarios image whitelist. I think this was to change the in some of the scenarios, it previously was forbidden to use a tag and to support some of the work he was doing with mass to try to update mass to 1604. He needed to tag things in that. So there's a patch to image builder that allowed that to happen. And then creating the Helm charts repo and adding it to the repo manifest, that was to support the other work that Andy mentioned about using Helm directly. And so that was also done. Matteo, did you want to talk to 2806?
Yeah, core 2806 actually was started last week after the TST when we decided to go all in on Kubernetes. It has been paused right away because it needs some design discussion on how to version the container and how to manage them. Because as now all our containers depends on a parent image called candidate, but we don't want to publish that on Docker Hub because it may fail the current build. So we need to figure out what the right direction is.
But I think we determined that we weren't blocked in the Kubernetes work. We weren't blocked by this task because image builder image builder's already doing a good job of pushing tagged images to Docker Hub. We just needed to pick the right tags.
It's not blocking us.
Okay, thanks, Matteo. Thanks, Andy. Unit testing framework. Nothing there. Nothing in upgraded Xenial. Nothing in cleanup. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. Deploy XOS on Onos using Helm charts. Andy?
So 2814 is a Helm chart for bringing up the Onos container running Onos, not the XOS service. That's done. Although I don't see it here, there's also I was doing some work with bringing up XOS services using Helm charts. That's in progress, and the final bit of that I think is going to be bringing up an XOS profile using Helm charts. So that's going to happen in the next sprint, but that's in progress right now.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Gopi?
Yeah, so I do think that we can consider 2501 complete. I finished the migration of the Docker Compose, which consists of a bunch of containers that we collectively called XOS Core, and migrated it to equivalent Kubernetes resources last week. Specifically, I think on Thursday and Friday, we managed to get it working. And we've since moved on from there to discuss the overall Helm architecture. So I do think that this is done.
Okay, thanks, Gopi. Scott?
So eliminating whole directory mounts, this is primarily the opt cord profile directory that was mounted into the core container, and we did this just to smooth the transition to Kubernetes so that it would, because Kubernetes doesn't allow us to do those directory mounts, so we wanted the Docker Compose set up the same way so that we could prove that it would then work in Kubernetes as well.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Looking down here. RCord zero-touch subscriber provisioning. Matteo?
So this is, in short, a bunch of work to support the integration with Volta. So we are 2762. We decided not to create a Volta service, but to get the VOLT service smart enough to support both the OLT case and the Volta case. We created some models to support the information that we need to configure Volta. And 2764 synchronizer for Volta is in progress. So far, we can configure an OLT device. We will move to the synchronization for ONUs this week. But those are actually information that we need to read from Volta, not to push there. I lost the video for some reason, but 2765, it's something that will happen down the line. Once we have the subscriber configured in Volta, we need to configure Onos, in particular the fabric, to strip the C tag and the S tag in a non-VSG scenario. We refactored the record subscriber to remove the epic and move them in the underscore decl. And work in progress is to remove an encoded dependencies between the VLT and the VSG service that Andy found yesterday.
Okay, thanks, Matteo. Finally, the issues without epics. The first two are Luca's. These are also related to the mass, building the mass containers under 1604 and getting them up. It looks like the automation containers were done, but are being automatically built, but we have to change over to have them being pulled. I think that I might pick up 2776 from Luca early in the next sprint. The third one is was updating the mass REST API to 2.0. That was done in the 1604 branch. It is getting pulled in the later two. And I set up a new pod for RCore tests. That was done, but I don't know the exact details of that. Suchitra, do you happen to know those?
No, I think this is a different.
Oh, it's not a QA thing. Okay.
QA is a pod that Luca created to let us experiment the new deployment. So it's basically 3 servers connected by a flat network. We are going to install Kubernetes on top of it and deploy XOS, Onos, and Volta on top of Kubernetes.
Okay, thanks, Matteo. Do you want to talk to the other two items here?
Yeah, so 2796 create an record service has not started yet because it's not a priority, but it's related to the owner issue that Scott reported before. It's an easy task, I just didn't have the time to tackle it. While 2810 is related to the fact that we are going to read information from Volta because it's setting up a lot of things for us. And so we need to enforce the feedback state access policies in XOS. Basically, there are some fields in our model that can be written only by the synchronizer when they read the information from the DNF or backend, but they cannot be touched by the user, otherwise the system will break.
Okay, thanks. I think that's everything that's in Jira. Moving back to the presentation. Moving on, Sprint 2. We're in our second sprint. This is the last. Through the end of the month is the end of Sprint 2. We're going to have planning on Sprint 2 tomorrow between 11 a.m. and 12 p.m. PT. That's going to overlap Scrum. I think when I sent out the email, I had it at the wrong time. I think I said 10 a.m. to 11, but it's actually going to be 11 to noon. ONS is concurrent with the end of the sprint, so if you're going to be participating in ONS, please make sure that you don't bite off more than you can chew on that. I've created the Sprint 2 in Jira, so we can add tasks to it. I'm going to close out Sprint 1, and things that were undone are going to fall into the backlog. Probably end of the day today, so probably about 5 o'clock PT. So please close out any other items if you notice something that wasn't closed out. Are there any other comments before we end the meeting?
So I don't see the calendar item for tomorrow. Did you already send it out?
I did not. I'm going to send it out just after this meeting.
Yeah, so we might be a little time scratched if it goes over because tomorrow at noon we also have the all hands.
Okay. I'll keep track of that. These meetings have been going fairly efficiently, so I don't think we're going to take the whole hour. We may or we may not. The 6.0 alpha release or the interim release, we're aiming for Helm and Kubernetes is pretty much going to be the main priority. So I think most things are going to fall into that.
There's also the certification brigade meeting between 11 and 12. Is that happening at all? Is somebody going to participate in that, or should we just?
That meeting is just internal. I am mostly there, and that is a few other people from the community are going to join. I think Luca was there, but then Luca anyway, he's on PTO. And it's just myself from ONF.
Okay. If there are scheduling issues, we can change the time on that. That was I didn't hear any objections to it when we sent out an email. Although that email probably wasn't as widely circulated as it could have been.
I think it's fine. I'm sorry. I'm fine with that because either Kailash or myself, one of us will usually represent the meeting, so it's okay.
Okay. So just among the people who are present, will 11 a.m. tomorrow PT work for people? Or
yeah.
Okay.
Zach, if you want to, this is Larry. If you want to move into the platform time, that would probably be okay.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that. So maybe that is the ideal time, unless we have something really important to discuss during the platform call.
Okay, I can do that. Let's just change that now. Let's say 10 o'clock. So then actually my previous email wasn't a lie. It kind of worked out. So we'll do that 10 a.m. and then if there are other platform things, we can maybe pick that up after. Does that sound good to everyone?
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you all. If there aren't any other comments, I'm going to stop the recording and thanks everyone for participating.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.